So, I'm going to take you through a. Everyone hear me all good? And I'm going to be one of those fellows who I'm probably going to sit down for some of it. And some of it I'm actually going to get you to move around a little bit as well, just to throw it all out for our AV man at the back, just to make it really hard for him. Is because it's what I want to share about today is something that I've got a passion for, and then something I feel that the reason we've come today is because you've got a passion for it as well. And so I want to take us through a bit of the journey, starting off by letting you know who I am, why I'm here, how I met this handsome fellow at the back, with a bit of a funny accent, and but what kind of brought me back home. So my whānau is from here, and so I have a genuine and authentic bias to come and do things back home. I live in Hamilton, but when the chance allows it, I can do it on work. Like, yo, I'll head back to the coast. I've got no qualms about that. Oh, sweet, sweet. But I'll get stuck into it. Actually, I put a presentation today, and I promise you I didn't do it just before sitting down. I did tweak it just before sitting down, but I guess it's been a matter of a range of things that have been going through my head the last few days and saying, actually, what should I share with our whānau? What's most pertinent? And actually, some of the stuff I want to do today is not about me and really not about me. I like hearing my own voice. I'm a Ngāti Porou boy. I think I'm great at everything. I think I can sing. I think I can dance. And other people tell me otherwise. My wife's from up north, and she kind of hums me sometimes, but I still think I'm pretty onto it. But the session that I've put in today is focused around this capability versus accessibility. It's something that's quite, I think, significant within not only Aotearoa, but also the world, a range of different communities. And I'm going to share a few things shortly, and I'll get into it because I'll start talking about things that I've got slides for, that it's not just a Māori thing. I think there's far bigger discussion point that we need to focus on as well. But yeah, ko so ko Ian Musson talking. We Keelans and Waihis and Mackies. My dad's a Musson from down south, so that's why I got that name. Like, it's a funny name for a Māori, Musson. The hell's that? But we're from, so our bones lie down in Whangarā, Tolaga, and up in Rurus as well. So it's an awesome opportunity for me to come back, and like telling everyone, I like to try and get back as much as I can. I don't as often as I can, but when I do, I'll make the most of it, particularly when it's on work's time. But to kind of kick off my story, is I want to share you. I wonder if I'm allowed to. I'm sweet. I want to move now. So I want to tell you a little bit about me, and I guess it starts with these two people up here. So I'm an only child, so I was probably a spoiled little brat. I don't think I was, but mum and dad probably have something different to say. But I guess why I want to start there is, one, they're obviously the most influential people in my life, but also I want to acknowledge that I was probably quite privileged as a young fella, and I want to get that out there because mindful of the discussion that I'm going to have talks around actually some of our kids who don't have that opportunity. And so we weren't rich, nothing like that, but mum and dad worked extremely hard to allow opportunities that they saw fitting for me. And I was able to do them. So I always kind of premise it that I was pretty privileged, to be fair. So a lot of my discussion comes with that undertone. So, and I'm mindful of that. Not all of our whānau are in these posies. She might be watching. I live in Hamilton. So this is my darling wife. I just looked down the camera in case she is watching. You never know, eh? So
she's watching.
She's watching, yeah. Or she will, or she's here somewhere. So we've known each other for about 20 years now. So I'm 34. Let's put it up there so you don't have to guess. Because otherwise you guess, you might guess something too high and I'll get offended later. But we've known each other from about 14, and we've been, I guess, together since we were about 17. So half our lives. And so she's been a very influential part of my life. And then my two boys. So Elijah, the big one, and Nico, our small boy. Funny story, but it's not that funny. I find it funny. You know, we live in Hamilton, so there's not many kids named Nico. You come back here, and there was a write-up in the paper a few years ago about all the kids named Nico. And there's like 50 of them got a photo in the middle of town. It's like, yeah, you stay Hamilton boy and you'll flash. So that's our babies at the moment. And so I guess the reason I do what I do is because of these two incredible people and my beautiful wife, but also for these two other fellas here in terms of giving them opportunities and I think going forward. For me to tell you a little bit about my journey is, so clearly I'm not very tall, but I had the opportunity a few years back to lead out a kaupapa called Kokiri, and the focus there was how do we support Māori entrepreneurs. So there are these things called accelerators around the world. In New Zealand, we have a few, and they've been around for about 10 years, and they have a model that tends to work. The only problem we noticed a few years ago is they're actually looking at them, not many brown faces participating in them. Okay, and it's like, okay, that could be something, that may not be something. But what we figured through it, and I guess part of it was assumptions that we were able to then validate later on, is that what these accelerators were trying to achieve was great, but not necessarily the great thing for our whānau. Now, what I mean by that is I like to talk about this notion of what success looks like, and it differs for different people, right? And so oftentimes these traditional accelerators focused on building success in terms of a financial return. Actually, some of our whānau, what their push was, how do I create jobs? How do I create something for my community? How do I create something that's far bigger than me? And so we presented a program that wasn't perfect, but worked towards those as values as such. And what we wanted to try and do is build something that was, I guess, what it wasn't was an existing program or an existing accelerator model using proven techniques that was given a brown name and kind of browned up. How do we actually kind of extract everything, look at the things that are great from that perspective, but also build it upon values that are meaningful to, I guess, to Te Ao Māori and such. And while we might not have got it perfect, we're in a better space going forward. So that was me, that was my baby for a while, and I was super pumped. I was on a phone call this morning because our second crew are just going through that at the moment, and they're getting ready to pitch in a few weeks. So super excited about supporting some of our whānau. This is the whānau from our first Kokiri crew. And the reason I bring them up there is they're a big part of my journey as well in terms of who I am and what I do now. They do something and have done some incredible things that weren't always million-dollar ideas, but could create an opportunity for their community. So as an example, and how I like to explain that is, you could build a business and make $1 million in Central Auckland by yourself. Good on you, that's great, that's success, you can't shake that, right? Or you could be in a community like, say if we're back home, be up in Ruatoria, for example, you can create an opportunity that creates 40 jobs. Now 40 whānaus have someone who's going to mahi every day, 80 kids have mum or dad to, other examples, and you can actually have the impact to change your community through the same amount of income that's brought in. So our focus and where my heart lies, how do we actually impact and support communities to build themselves in that space? Over here, so I get to be on this cool buzz called Te Hononga Ākiwa. And so we take, I guess, university students that are Māori to other parts of the world. And the idea behind that is oftentimes, I think some of us might have been in a situation where we love what we have at home, but when we go somewhere else and then look back, we really appreciate what we have. We really realize how special Aotearoa is. And that's when you get like, shucks. And it's an expensive way to learn that lesson, but we get some young people who just realize that there's so much back home, so I actually need to get my act together. I need to do something. This is a mate of mine called Kiana Frank, Koe chick, Hawaiian Sheila. I shouldn't say Sheila, I'm on camera. Hawaiian walking there. But with her, she is a great example to me. So she's a microbiologist. She's got a PhD from Harvard, and she teaches at the University of Hawaii Manoa. Super brainy, but she's helped me understand what microbiology is through hula, where she's taking cultural components and I guess science and how we can bring those together to help our young people realize and understand what they are. More whānau, me speaking at different things and cooking it with some really cool people, but the idea being is why I wanted to share that is it kind of shapes me as a person that lies into where my passions lie, and then kind of brings me to present what I'm going to share about today. What we're going to go through today is I want to, it's not an advert from today. So I work for Young Enterprise, hence the branding. I put that up there. My role there is Head of Māori Engagement. So we have a program that supports about 4,500 rangatahi across the country. We have actually a good number of Māori, to be fair. We have about 600 of those are Māori students. So it's pretty good, but how do we get more meaningful engagement? So I guess my role is to support that. Today's not about me, it's actually about you, a hell of a lot more. And it's not about digging into the past, okay? So it's an area that I'm passionate about, but I guess the focus is not to look back, oh, these are the bad things that have happened. It's around, I guess in this, it's not just about Māori. And so part of the whakaaro that I bring and that I have And that was I guess the write-up for today was, this accessibility versus capability discussion. Yes, there is some Māori involved. There's also a Pacifica whānau. There's just other communities that suffer for different reasons who don't have the opportunity. So we're going to focus on that. But rather today is around acknowledging our past, focusing towards the future, taking control of opportunity and taking steps to implement changes going forward, what we can do. In order to do that, I'll actually shut up for a bit and I'm going to get our whānau to be more involved. And this is going to I'm going to apologize to our, he knows I'm going to do that. I'm going to apologize already, but what I want us to do is kind of create a circle with our seats. So as opposed to kind of sitting in rows, which is cool, has its place, but let's create a circle if we can. I like this. It allows me to, like I said, I like hearing my own voice, but it's far more important that this become a collaborative process, because I guess the focus of today is around my discussion on accessibility and capability, but it's not a solution that I have a solution. It's around how do we kind of connect as a community to talk about these things. So to set the scene, the narrative that I'm discussing today is kind of the haves and the have-nots. So what I mean by that, and I'll premise it by talking about this capability versus accessibility, is in my mind, and again, there is some evidence, but these are my thoughts effectively, is that a lot of our young people, not just our young people, they have the capability to do amazing things. But sometimes they're limited by accessibility to the tools to get there. And so that's where I sit quite firmly, so not gonna lie about it, I think that's the truth. And I guess I sit quite firmly in that space. Now, the idea, so there's this discussion around the haves and the have-nots. And I'll use an example to tell a bit of a story. And I won't be too specific, but I guess in my role with Young Enterprise, you get the opportunity to see a whole bunch of young people pitch their ideas. And it's honestly, it's an emotional experience because you see some young people doing some cool things. You also see the differences between certain schools that have some incredible things and some incredible people, and some schools that have some incredible kids, but don't have access to some of the tools. And so that's where it sits really quite strong with me. And one example, without going into too much detail, is I've watched the school present pitch where these young women have walked in really confident in an amazing dress uniform. We'll say it's a private school, but they've got a lot of confidence. Also, mum, dad, or someone might be a teacher there really supporting them and wants the best for them. And these kids do amazing, okay? Nothing against them. We have some kids who have this great desire and this real incredible yearn, but they clearly don't have the confidence or the access to certain things. And so for me, it's quite disheartening. And I don't want to see anyone be in that position. And I guess more so as a parent, I don't want my kids to be in that position where they feel like they can't achieve or do something because of someone else's something around them. It's not their fault. Because I see some kids, and not taking away anything from these more well-to-do schools, because these kids are incredible, they do some amazing things, but how do we bring our other rangatahi to a space where they can be equally as impactful? So the whānau preparedness is the second kind of bullet point I have up there, and what I mean by that is sometimes we have some incredible young people who get really excited. They have a genuine passion, whether it's around technology or entrepreneurship. They've got a great idea and they want to do incredible things. They go home, but mum, dad, nanny, papa, or whomever it may be, just doesn't have the ability to support them on their next phase. And it's not their fault. We know what we know, and that's our life. I think of if my kids ask me a certain question, I can give them insight on what I know. But if it hasn't been my livelihood, I'm probably going to steer a little bit clear from it. So what happens is, it's not that parents kind of shut things down. It may happen sometime, but we talk about what we're good at and what we know, which may not be entrepreneurship, it may not be technology. And so we kind of fall into that perspective. So what I guess talk about is how do we build young people up and give them access but also bring that whānau with them as well, because it's one thing to raise a child, you might suggest, but we want to bring the whānau in the journey so everyone can be positively impacted by it. It's just a few pictures, because words are cool, but pictures are a little bit better. Just a few kind of recent things of folks in the media around talking around this space. Now, it's not an Aotearoa thing. I guess I've been super lucky is probably the term, to do a bunch of mahi in the likes of Hawaii, Canada, where this is very much the same discussion that goes on. And so we're mindful there's not just something that's happening here, something that happens in quite a few parts of the world. But to be fair, Tairāwhiti is actually better than most parts around the places around the country. I look around and what's happening here in Gisborne in particular, and up the coast a little bit, compared to other places around the country, the opportunities for our young people in terms of engaging with technology and entrepreneurship are actually in a far better position. I'm not going to say that everything's perfect, but if you compare to, like, I was talking to my wife yesterday, we had lunch, if he's on camera. I'm just building up brownie points, right? And we were talking about Honui as an example. We're saying, this is cool ass thing that my big boy would love. Like, he just love it. And I was gutted I couldn't be back here in time to be the random dude without a kid last night at the retro gaming stuff. I would have found one, stole Malcolm's or something. Because my big boy would love that. But in Hamilton, a city that's effectively maybe 3 times the size, there's nothing like that. And you say, okay, why? And there's no reason it isn't. Just either one, there's no one, say, like the trust willing to back an opportunity like that, or there's other mechanisms, but there's no reason it shouldn't be. So we started talking around that, and how do we get some of that for our young kids in Hamilton? Super selfish because my boy's in that posse, but mindful that it's not an isolated incident. There's other parents who are just like that. So I look at an example. So we've got, Tōnui, you've got 3W, you've got Tairāwhiti Innovation, just kind of 3 quick ones you can find online that are happening here. We don't really find the equivalents as such in different parts of the country. Down the bottom are just a few other things that happen around the motu that support kind of young people in technology. But, that's unfortunately the few things that happen. So how do we actually create more of that? Now, I said before I was going to be quiet, and clearly I haven't. So it's going to start soon, I promise you. But in order to kind of further this discussion, I wanted to kind of break down the synopsis I provided for why we're here today as a discussion point. So I broke it into 3 key pieces, and I want us to share an insight and thoughts on it. Whether we agree or disagree, it's up to us, because I'm mindful that I like to talk about this topic, but cool, Ian, that's your thoughts. And, again, bringing on that Ngāti Pro male, I can solve the world, right? I can't, but how do we get collective insight to be able to share what we think can be better for our community, what we think might be able to then contribute to Aotearoa and also te ao beyond that as well. Makes sense? That means you've got to talk too, okay? Because like clearly I've got no problem talking. But what I'll do is I'm going to read out the first part of the synopsis that I provided for Tech Week, and then I want to get just some thoughts going out there. And there's no real order. Clearly everyone yells out something bad's going to happen. Everyone's going but for people just to kind of share thoughts, what they think about that statement, how they think they might be able to positively kind of engage with that or actually create something from that. Come on. Sweet. So the first one is evident underrepresentation of Māori, as well as Pacific Islander, low income, and other students in entrepreneurial activity persists. Is this something we believe?
Yes,
we know. Yeah. Why? Why do we know that? How do we know that? Come from that background?
Because you don't see those faces. They're not well represented. They're not publicised or talked about as much as the others.
Cool.
I even disagree with them, Tairāwhiti.
Yeah.
We have a young enterprise, runs very well out of Gisborne Boys High School, Gisborne Girls, sometimes little, and up the coast there, Tolaga Bay, and not so much Ngata College, but at Te Waiu, and even Kawakoa Mai Tāwhiti, first like a Tairāwhiti. So there's always that, and I suppose it's within school. If there's drivers in the school. We always know that a project will need drivers, and some teachers or a community person comes in and they drive those young enterprises, and they've been quite successful. I suppose for me, it's about how do they get beyond school, because it's in the school, and yeah, some of them thrive quite well, and it's getting them out, and it's the community.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Cool. I'll just bring up one point there is oftentimes it's reliant on someone or a person driving it. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we're having a chat before briefly of how some schools will. So we talked about, I guess, some school in Auckland, right, has a director of innovation. Flash. My school didn't have that, but other schools don't, and oftentimes it's a teacher who's wearing multiple hats. So it is sometimes we come back to almost the haves and the have-nots, or the people, or the teachers, or whomever it may be in the community that wants to drive something extra, and so it relies on that person. And so how do we get beyond that as well? Is probably the next phase. But other thoughts on the
it's
comments?
also what they see in the community.
Yeah.
So if they see innovation in the community, they think, hey, that's cool. I can probably do that. They're going to give it a go.
Yeah.
And I think they have the ability to access, to find, you cobble together what you need when you need it. So it's out there, but it's a lot easier for some than it is for others.
Yeah, I think I like that narrative too, because if we use the word quite loosely, like we've got a lot of young people who like to tutu, right? And they like to play with things and they to do things. And I guess for me, that kind of goes back to a point where I think the capability exists. So sometimes the ability to kind of go beyond high school or wherever it may be is a little bit harder. Where you've got people who, mad ability to do something and desire to do it, but how do we support them a little bit further?
I think we've also got a society that a generation that possibly expects to be given things. So,
Well, I like your point before too, is sometimes, and I think Candace picked it up as well, it's unfortunate when I know your name, because it means you get picked on. But Shannon laughs as well, and I know her name as well. So the idea is, you're right, there's this notion of we kind of are drawn towards things that resemble us. So if we don't see a lot of, say, brown faces, we'll just put it out there, in certain situations, are we really drawn to them? Like, we've had this conversation for years and years and years of young students, Māori, Polynesian students who strive towards becoming professional athletes. Nothing wrong with that. But oftentimes it's because the examples of the heroes that they see, there's many of them in that forum where there's less in the space of technology or entrepreneurship. Or actually, to be fair, there may not be less. Society just measures success in a different way. So those that we deem successful are the ones we portray in the media. Maybe. Clearly, you kind of know where my thoughts might be on that. So measures of success in other ways, maybe we don't capture them as well, or they're not thought of as highly. And the reason I say that, and I'll say this as an example of, and again, I won't make names, but if you're the person in the story, you're not in the room, you know who you were, is I got to go to an awards ceremony a while back where it was for Young Enterprise, and we have our national awards. And some of the kids are doing incredible things. Like, you're sitting there like what was I doing when I was 16? It was not that. It was playing sports and looking at girls. And I always tell people that in that order too, like sports was the priority. And I guess these kids are doing incredible things. I was like blown away by their abilities. But then we had a young woman who had, like, her journey was quite different. So she was through a teen parent unit. So she had, she was a young mum. I guess the stresses on her were not how what do my friends think of me at school. It was like, I've got to feed my baby, place to live, plus I want to become an entrepreneur and do this. And I think of her journey, her self-journey is quite phenomenal, right? In terms of she had a baby when she was young, so people already put her into a particular box that you can do these things. And for her to come and achieve well and do incredible things, I just think of her personally like, that's incredible. Yet we don't necessarily recognize that as highly as being a great success as we do with someone who's made a lot of money or done something else, where in my head it's probably a far greater success on her journey, but our attention goes somewhere else. So I guess what I'm getting at is perhaps these entrepreneurs or these tech folk, they actually do exist. We just don't know them because we don't talk about them as much. Maybe.
I think it depends on what society values too. And,
Yeah.
you know, we've gone through a period where society values the qualifications as a doctor or a lawyer, or so if you were anything else, if you had some other passion, not valued as highly, you're a bit invisible.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, the thing that keeps coming up for me is the aspiration. You know, that's kind of the foundation of it. That it has, people have to have the aspiration to consider it, and that, you know, so there are, the role models are a major factor, and so that's why sports, you know, sports heroes are, you know, tend to get a lot of attention. And whether there are those heroes, you know, are there really tech heroes? I don't know. And, you know, and especially across the country or across, you know, these communities where, so, you know, it's been really fascinating for me to hear about the struggle locally to get people to be engaged with a tech community here. Where in Wellington, where I live, it's you know, it's in hot demand, and it's not a struggle to. And so, like, that aspiration to even be involved, you know, where does that start?
Personally, I mean, I'm a great believer in the power of enterprise and of our young people and our just people who want to set up business. And technology is a huge enabler of that. But in terms of our kids, when they go through the schooling system, for example, they're not taught business or how money works. So they're sort of taught to be a worker. And many of our people weren't in a position to set up business. And we're not going to go to the past, but that is one of the reasons that, you know, no access to capital, no assets to have a loan to be able to get a business. But now with the power of technology, there's a lot less barriers to enter business. So I think this will start getting better. The doors are open more.
I think it's a good turning point conversation too, because what can quite easily get into is like, oh, these are the things that, oh, this is why, this is why, this is why. And I guess that's kind of part of what I thought I had. Okay, past is the past. And what is the next phase for us? How do we kind of reshape things going forward? So the next statement I got up there, and thank you for everyone contributing, because I guess otherwise it would be super weird. I'll just read something out and you're like, okay, so thank you. The next part of it was, so it's a continuation of that first part. So I guess, you know, the underrepresentation of these whānau is in part because Indigenous and other non-Western cultures have been stereotypically portrayed as antithetical or incompatible towards excellence in technology and innovation. So a range of words saying that, you know, is there this portrayal that actually, oh, that's not for you fellas. That doesn't marry up. Now, I'm not trying to put that out there as this is what it is, but I like our thoughts on it. And then I guess from that, why do we think it might be like that? Because I don't think that's, well, I think there has been some truth to it. But I think we're at a position of change.
I think it probably still echoes what Candace said about you can't be what you can't see. So what has been put in front of us as far as tech heroes is Zuckerberg. You know, we can't see ourselves in Zuckerberg. We want to see ourselves in Maruniho Niho, you know, female Māori game developer. That's what we want to see. The opportunity, if we want to quickly be moving from looking back to looking forward, is when we talk about the power of technology, it is now a platform for all of us. So we actually don't have to be informed and have our rangatahi informed by what corporate media decides we should see. We have the opportunity to uplift anyone we think of value. And so I think we've got an opportunity here. If we say we're not seeing Māori in tech, but we believe there is Māori in tech, then let's celebrate, let's go viral with Māori in tech. That way we then get to show that to our tamariki. They get to see it not simply as a consumer, a fun thing to do at the fish and chip shop, on the Spaces machine, that might have been the 80s. Now it's, Fortnite on your console at home, but they're actually exploring technology as a creation tool and an opportunity to be entrepreneurs, business owners, business leaders, enablers.
I think there's a challenge in there too, because I'd suggest that all of us in the room, and that's a massive assumption, and I could be wrong, I believe that I'm not, is that we all know someone who's Māori, Pacific Island, or who, whatever it may be, who's in tech in some way, shape, or form. Okay, and, so I guess the challenge then is actually, do we actually talk about them? Do we do promote them? Do we push them out there? And I suggest there may be the odd one, but we probably don't. And so the opportunity to have these tech heroes that look, or that for our kids look like them, sound like them, act like them, have the same background as them, is limited because we don't talk about them. And I guess for me, when we ran the first iteration of Kōkiri, it was around, you can have speakers who come and share to the cohort, those that are what I call inspirational or aspirational. So there's those that are like, oh, that's real cool, that follows me, or that woman is amazing, but there's so much distance between me and them, I just don't feel I can catch up to them. Whereas I'd rather hear from someone and hear the war stories of someone who's a step or two ahead of me, who's got the scars on their back, who's still hustling. For me, that's like, oh, that's cool. Like the sister's cracking it, but she's had some struggles, as opposed to, say the Zuckerbergs and like, clearly they've had struggles as well, but always says like, oh, that fellow is cracking it, I can't get there. And maybe that's just a bad way to think of it, but sometimes I think that does creep into our minds. So how do we create more folk who are a step ahead of us, that are there, not create the folk, because I think they're there, is how do we bring them out of the woodworks a little bit more? How do we tell Candace's story a hell of a lot more? Because I think, like last year, was it? And it was just kind of a conversation that we got connected. But had that not occurred, I wouldn't have known much about her and the like. So the challenge is there. Other thoughts?
I think that technology and innovation has been quite a key underpinning of our history anyway, pre-colonisation. Look at the way that we travel the world, the types of trade we did, the way that we pick up technologies, the using of our own textiles like muka and harakeke for ropes, for British Navy. We've got some amazing technology and innovation stories right throughout our own history, but we just never hear them. So I think for me, like personally, I went to university in Otago and suddenly realised that the university system silos knowledge. So you've got humanities, you've got business over here, you've got the biosciences, and humanities would be all cousin to the sciences, all this kind of stuff. I was thinking, wow, I didn't realise you could break your knowledge up. But we worked in a collaborative hub, all postgraduate students. So I met students from the classics, students from business, students from things. We started to talk about what our research was doing. And then kind of realised there was someone in the classics studying different types of economic psychology around the world among Indigenous peoples, and had these amazing stories of his own tūpuna down in Kaitapu, who, because we didn't have a written language, we had an incredible capacity to memorise and to retain information. And so in terms of entrepreneurial skills, they could travel the world to pick up the language of another country, because they learned the kind of underpinning rules of language, of linguistics, and they could, travel and pick up Latin, pick up Spanish and Chinese, and so that's how they traded. So you kind of suddenly, your mind is open to all these other things around how technology and innovation is like a fundamental part of our history. Yeah, so I think that with our New Zealand history now being part of our core curriculum, we've got this opportunity to start to change some of these narratives for our young Māori and Indigenous children that live here in Aotearoa, and kind of make them realise it's not a new concept for us, it's actually an old one. And we had some amazing innovative ideas back in the day that actually got squashed during that process of colonisation, but actually still have quite a lot of legs in this world. Yeah, and that perhaps we should be kind of looking to the past to understand what our future looks like.
No, thank you for those comments too, because you're right. So I guess what I take, a bunch of things I take from it, and the first thing that stuck out to me is often when you use the word technology, we get it confused with the meaning of digital. So we think technology it's got to be a digital thing, right? Whereas technology is something that's evolved over time. So tech 200 years ago was quite different to what it is today. You know, at one point the wheel was technology. That was the new latest innovation. And we hear of these stories and we talk about these tupuna and what they've done on these journeys. And I think for me, funny thing, I guess going back to when I was talking about how oftentimes we don't realize what we have until we're somewhere else. I was in Hawaii and had the chance to meet with a guy, Nainoa Thompson, who's out of waka called Hukulea. And they come to Aotearoa, like buzzy just to listen to his thoughts and just where his kind of thinking goes. But for them to realize that Hukulea the waka, it was a physical journey, but it was a journey of connecting people. But I'm talking about traditional navigating styles and just the processes that I guess our whānau all around the globe that they went through, and just the innovation and the mindset. And I think the innovative mindset that you do something and trial something. You think if you're sitting pretty safely in a nice little place, right, somewhere in the globe, oh, let's jump on this, like not to diminish it, but you know, effectively when we look at it now, it's like a relatively innovative for the time, but I don't know if I'd get on one of those double hawaka now and sail across the Pacific, I'd be like, I don't know. But you know, for them to be on that, like, okay, and we're going that way because there's something there. We don't know what it is, but we're going to find it. And so there's a lot of this discussion of, I guess, in our whakapapa. And I think the cool thing with that is to realize that through our DNA, like in our blood, are these innovators and these entrepreneurs and these technologists of history. And sometimes it's a matter of how do we bring those stories to life. So we've got a young fella sitting here or a young woman sitting here, realizing that we're talking about their tupuna, who's not too far descended from them, 2, 3, however many generations back, who've done these incredible things that we've actually never really thought about them as being technologists or entrepreneurs, because there's something quite special when you realize, you know, that's a few generations removed from me, but their blood runs through my veins. I think there's something quite special. So this is me going a little bit of a side note, but my whole mindset and thought is that, so I'm in a position today to kind of share things, but what I share today is a combination of my tupuna and me being kind of the voice for them today. So in terms of what the knowledge that they'll have or how it brings, I'm just the vessel today, effectively. So how do we kind of share these things with our young people? Because there's something extremely motivating about knowing what your whānau's done. Yeah. Any thoughts? Or should I go to the next slide?
I think it comes back to digital technology, media, as a media to capture and share those stories, which we're capable of doing now.
And I think, like, so Kane and I were speaking before, sorry, bro, I know your name, bro. So we've got a common friend called Lee Timmins. Okay? If the bro's listening, he's listening. If not, I'm going to make him listen later because I'm dropping his name. Where he set up a piece of technology where it's all around storytelling and sharing stories of that aren't the common stories. Like we hear about Maori, right? But there's so many other tupuna that we actually are a big part of us that we may not know about. And being able to hear their stories and hear their journeys, but being able to be in place, be here and realize what happened right there. There's something quite special about that. So, and this is what Lee does through a medium of technology to kind of aid us to learn and aid our young people to learn as well. And I'll jump to the next one. Just, my time's nearly up, but we keep talking. That's why I look at Malcolm. So the last part is my thoughts on that. These notes. So what we've talked about so far, that these carry into young people's self-belief, and consequently their self-identification regarding their potential to excel or have place in enterprise or innovation and technology, and ultimately feelings that they don't belong in such spaces. So I think, and I'll say I think, I don't tend to use the word think, but I guess these are my thoughts, is that the discussion we've had so far, and I guess some of the things that are happening in the world, kind of lead some of our young people to think of this themselves. And the reason I say that is I've been in opportunities where I've seen young people present, and you see those that don't fit the mold, we'll say, the mold of being someone in innovation and technology, who are relatively shy and really don't feel like they belong in that forum, where they've actually got amazing things to share. Where I've had some young people get up and, you know, so for Young Enterprise, we have these mid-year pitches. They're close to the public because they're doing our young people doing their first time they're pitching an idea. And you see the schools and the young students who super confident, do some great things, sharing some great insight, yada, yada, yada. And you see some kids who will come in, you know, they'll walk in there, head down, they make eye contact with the audience because they've been told they need to, so they'll read, look up, like, look like they're going to pick on you. Like, I think if one kid look up and was like, that kid's going to run at you if you give him a bad comment. But, you know, look at that, look down, read, look up, and you can tell how nervous he is and the feeling that he doesn't actually belong in that forum, in that space, which is a shame because when you hear this kid's story and what he talks about is actually, oh, we've made this product, you know, we've sold 40 units of it, we've learned from it, this was wrong with it, so we fixed it, we've done this, moved back. Kids made money, gone through an iterative process of, I guess, build something, measured it, learned from it, done it again, but still doesn't feel like he belongs there. Where compared to some of these other students who are more, we'll say, elite school, for lack of a better word, who have some great ideas but haven't managed to do that. Yet this kid who's been through the process, who started the business, made money, doesn't feel like he belongs in the same forum as these other kids because they're a little bit more confident who haven't made money, which is a shame, in my opinion, right? But what are our thoughts on this? Do we think that's real?
Sadly, it is.
Yeah.
For lots of our kids, you know, sadly it is. But this place is a gold mine of entrepreneurship, you know, and there are some really unique things about this place where just below the surface of some of the stuff that, you know, there's kind of the barriers to really, for people to really recognize, you know, what is here, you know, yeah, unfortunately, lots of our kids don't see themselves in these kinds of spaces. But I think we also have to unpack the entrepreneurship model a little bit because, you know, that idea of the individualistic, largely male, largely money, you know, money determining success kind of model of entrepreneurship is not the one that is here, which is collective. It is largely wahine, you know, the girls that the young people that we're working with, it's at least 2/3 girls, you know, and it's social, it's environmental, it's about well-being. They thinking about entrepreneurship, about business in terms of its connection to being able to do something for community, for whānau, for, you know, and so that's, if we can really get our heads around kind of, you know, connecting those pieces together, the waka here for entrepreneurship, Tairāwhiti, technology, innovation is just going to go for miles. And we just haven't quite clocked it enough to, you know, we're getting there. There's some awesome stuff kind of happening around the place. There's some awesome kind of tauira, you know, now that are becoming a little bit more visible for people to now be able to, you know, it's still a little bit of ways, but it's kind of coming closer for some of our kids. But we need to do it as a whole community, right from our babies. That's where you actually got to start, is, you know, start feeding these things while they're in the puku and singing them songs about Maori the entrepreneur, Maori the, you know, like, and then up through our schooling system needs a real good update. We need an iOS version 10 point, you know, sort of 3 on the schooling model, but also community's going to have to take ownership and lead that part. And we kind of need to dial down kāwanatanga and turn up the volume on rangatiratanga a little bit more, and that's where I think the tools around technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, those are the tools for turning up the volume in that space. So it's all there, you know. It's just, and big thing is it's going to take a lot of courage because there's not that many people doing it, and it's a real dark, uncertain kind of place. Nobody gives you the map and says this is how you need to do it. Yes, there's some beautiful models kind of all around the world, but it's actually a lot of figuring out kind of stuff, you know, in order to figure out what's really going to work for our whānau here, you know, in Tairāwhiti, and it's a little bit of a lonely space. There's not that many people doing that work. You know, it's, you know, those that are, it's hard, you know, you're often doing most of it on your own back.
Sometimes you're driving it too, you're trying to drive it, but then there's others can't see the vision, or you're not able to express what you're trying to do, so you don't fit certain criteria or boxes, you know, whether it be with Calahan Innovations or different government entities. So you end up sort of driving a lonely waka, so to speak, and it takes longer to gain traction.
Yeah,
But
you know,
I wonder if it's partly that, you know, the Kumara doesn't sing about how sweet it is. So, you know, your story where, you know, the person's quietly working away there, doing fabulous things, but it's for others to notice that they're fabulous, and to sing those praises. You know, it's in our culture not to big up ourselves.
So I think
I
there's a
love
few,
the idea about the collaboration. I think that's quite key, especially if we're connecting the dots up and down the coast and Wairoa.
I think there's a few really awesome points that have come out. One around collaboration, one around actually how do we support those that are in our community doing incredible things who aren't going to talk about themselves, to shout them from the rooftop, to be those soapboxes for them. Because, well, to be fair, like if Ken has got him say, "Oh, I'm amazing at this, and this," everyone will be like, "Oh, okay, so sit down." And we would think that, right? Unfortunately, we would. So it's our responsibility today, actually, how do we prop that up? It's our responsibility that, okay, you know, we've all been here, participated in the discussion around actually, we see these things as concerns, and we know we can also identify mechanisms and means to overcome them. So the onus then falls on us to actually, are we going to do something about it? Because I guess the unfortunate thing would be is that if we all let in like, oh, yeah, 2 days, then we go back and like, I hope someone does something about that. And the idea is that we've had these ideas and we've shared and we've input into a discussion. And so the ask would be then for me to all of us, and including myself, is what would we do from here? You know,
Well, we have to do something. We're Taitec, and we've you know, committed within our community to providing access and skills and abilities where we can, and connecting with the other organisations within our rohe. So, yes,
With
we don't have a choice.
the Young Entrepreneur Program, is there training involved in that? Like, are you inviting Candace to present and share, and presenting her as a role model, and then, you know, using it as a platform to scale and to broaden the message and to reach and to redefine what entrepreneurship means? It seems like you have a pretty amazing platform potentially to do all those things.
and I think, so I guess full disclosure, I've been there, I started it during lockdown.
Right.
But the intent for me and my role is to definitely do that, is to ensure that, and whether Candace wants to or not. Hey sis, we've got this is the time without asking her as such, but it is definitely designed to do that. And so on that, and I guess the Kane's point too is how do we start it with younger that are younger as well? So it's like having these conversations is, I guess Young Enterprise generally traditionally serves the senior high school. For me, like I said earlier, I've got a definite bias to come and serve stuff down the coast. And so part of my mandate is running programs that are for our year 9s and year 10 students as well. And we haven't really done those down the coast. Guess what, we're coming down the coast this year.
Well, we definitely have within,
within
high schools, and it's probably in intermediate schools, the Tuakangatanga programs, where those who have gone before or have moved up, they help those coming through. So I think there's definitely room for that.
Yes.
And I suppose we need champions in our communities, that with whoever they be, whether it be someone who is quite high profile or someone who is just known to that kura or that whānau, whether it be a kaiti whānau, whether it be Elgin whānau, whether it be a Ruatore or Uawa. We need those champions, and that they are one of the catalysts that get our community to, we know it's not easy, but to come together. We seem to have a bit more of a tendency to look after our rangatahi more so than our pakeke, because we believe, well, by the time you've gotten sort of like out into the adult world, you should be able to fend for yourself, and also there's as you get older, and particularly when you return home, there's an expectation that you pay back, or you give back, or you help out. Not all of us do that. Well, not all of us know that, but perhaps if we set up some systems that we do see those who are champions within our community. They're not champions within our whānau, because we have those, they may be the same person, but we champion the cause of enterprise. We champion that, and if we have to lean to our bigger whanaunga like taika, then we get that, because particularly in this area, the creativity is just huge. But you see, the big timers, but now more so, like Cliff Curtis or Taika. You know, when you look at his humble beginnings when he was just running around with Jermaine and the other guy who were the Concords, they were just being absolute idiots. Now, now that is up for an Emmy. You know, it's sort of like what you did in the shadows, I think it was called. It was just rubbish sort of thing. back in, but now it's, you know, it's up for 7 Emmys, heading to maybe next year for an Oscar. And it's sort of like, wow. So it's possible. So those champions who we see that they are, he came from around the corner there in Whānau. That's where he came, and that's where he returns every time he gets the chance to come up, because that's where it's Whānau. So it's a little hop, skip and a jump. And I just look over there to Polly. Witi Maida comes from here. Any opportunity he can come home to do anything, to support anything, he does. And so it's those kind of champions who, in that creative world, who, you know, you maybe still look at them, oh, he's a writer, or he just does that. But when you talk, or when you see the other collaborations or the other influences people like Witi have had, people start to go, the most finest thing, though, he's ours. And that's the connection we have. And it's finding that connection because that we cooperate. Whether we like it or not at times, but we can cooperate. And the collaboration, the cooperative thing works for us. It may take a bit of massaging at times. It may take a bit of strong arming. It may take that nanny needs to talk to that one because that one is not playing the game. Or auntie needs to take them outside and have a little sort of tete-a-tete and say, right, get back in there and do what you are here to do, which is help us. Help us as a collective, as that whānau. So right on the button where Kane and Lily are, our collaborative and our cooperative. I don't really like the word collaborative because it reminds me of collaborators during World War II. And I have that sort of other thing. However, I need to move on from the past to the now, and collaborative become a catchphrase. But you know, we know how to cooperate. Whether we got a lot to offer, whether we've got only a little bit, we'll cooperate. If we see that our whānau, our community are coming together and using the spaces that are there. Because school is not open to our whānau, whether it be the students there, they're not open all the time, but out in the community we are. Out, whether it be at Tairāwhiti or the inn at Tolaga Bay or Tai Tech or other places here, if we have to, we need to open that night. We need to open on the weekend to let it in, instead of just being that model that says, right, we're only here from Monday to Friday and we only open from 8 to 5. And, you know, where else do our people go? Where else do people come and just make an inquiry? Hey, what about this? And then you go, okay, let's have a look. We either can put them in touch or go, okay, you might have to battle along for a little while, but online, put them online. And I was watching the webinar and I thinking that's my biggest sort of thing is just go online and type in how to and add whatever you need to do, and you'll be surprised at the responses that come up, whether it be on YouTube or on the internet. So it's very much an enablement, but it's about us as a community, just saying, you know, where's the champions? How do we sort of, we know they're there, the
Well,
tools
that's-
can attain it. How
To
do
me,
we?
that's, you know, the opportunity is, in a way, there's no barriers in theory. I think there definitely are some societal barriers. It's not technical barriers. It's not knowledge barriers, because you can Google anything, and you can build anything. Like now, I'm just talking software wise. You can easily build anything from scratch at almost no cost. So it is that combination of like having the aspiration, having the knowing to type into Google, how do I build a website, and having a reason to do that, like why, and you know, you have a need, you have a burning interest in doing that, and that you see a possibility that is a stepping stone to something bigger, and that is a path to creating something. I think that's the kind of the missing ingredient. And just you know, like you mentioned Taika, and you know, I wonder. So there's a hero. Has that kind of spawned an interest in filmmaking in the community? Is that, or not, or is that just kind of like he's a unique kind of a one-off, and that's just him? That's not. I don't have
I
access.
think
to that.
it depends on where you get that data. We're not sure how to collect that data. That tells us that these things are impacting our
Like, I'd suggest a few things, and I'll start to bring our combat to a little bit play. Sometimes we do a disservice to some of our heroes that exist because, Taika's doing some mean things, but then we talk some of the stuff down a little bit, and so, which is cool in one regard, we humanize them more so, for example, but at the same time we start taking away of the incredible things that we could aspire to, and so we do kind of restrict sometimes. I think if further to kind of our heroes or our beacons in the community, I'd suggest some of the ones that we need to look to are probably in this room already, who are involved, want to be involved, and how do we actually prop them up and give them the support that we need? Because oftentimes we look to those that we want to serve and neglect to actually service those that are trying to do that service. I guess two other things that kind of come out of that conversation is, what I love is that there's a real desire to have people building success from here. They're from here and do it from here. Because oftentimes what's happened in the past, and we were quite directive when we set up Kōkiri, is that we don't want to bring people away from wherever home is and suggest that to build your success, you've got to come to the cities, the big metro areas, where I think we'd all agree for the most part that with the access of technology and the ability to do things from a distance, you don't need to do that anymore. You can visit and do certain things, but you don't need to be there constantly. Because then what that happens then is that we can build these beacons of light. I won't call them beacons of hope because we don't need hope. You've got people who can do incredible things. These beacons of light that sit in our communities are like, bro, so-and-so's killing it from Gizzy. So-and-so's killing it from Tolaga, you know, as opposed to, oh, so-and-so, yeah, they were from here, but I've moved away to do this success. But how can we get someone who's still here doing those cool ass things?
I think actually picking up on something you said this morning was actually Taika probably loves what he does. So it's actually telling telling people you really have to love what you want to do, and just go and do it.
Or maybe he's just being him.
Well, and
Because that's really what a lot of things in my age group, that's what a lot of people were. They're just being them. They didn't want to change. So you go to school and you've got to do things a certain way. They didn't. They just said, no, I'm a Māori. When they say, even now, I heard some people the other day talking about changing the election from Māori to general, and I said, why? And they said, oh, well, we'd rather go general. And well, are you a Māori or what? You either are or you're not. And so, just be you. If you're a Pākehā, just be you. Don't try and change. Just be the person you are. But as going to school, so I haven't had a lot to do with the young ones except for my own children. But going to school, we missed out. We missed out on a lot of the kids that just be them. Because a lot of them, to be successful, they have to go through a certain path. So we miss out on them. At Tairāwhiti, we have a couple of young ones who you could see that they're having real struggles in life. And so we're trying to come down to them to say, well, what is it did you want? And we've got this boy here who's going like this all day, and I'm going, what is it that you want? What does that mean? So when the Māori men talk to him, they say, well, boy, stand up, talk to me properly. And this is the young Pākehā, and he resonates with them now, but we miss out on those. And yet today, I just left the Cisco course, and he's the one talking about all this stuff. I've never seen him talk so much. He's just telling all of these other fellas exactly what it is, I'm thinking, God, this kid is bloody clever. I thought he was really...
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, but he's really is very bright, and I think that's where we miss out on the kids. Some of those kids are the kids that we need to target, the ones that are at school. And I'm one of those kids. I was 27 out of 27 all my time at high school. When my children came home, they said, "Oh, Mum, I'm sorry, I only got B's." So I actually put my reports on the wall so they could see. And it wasn't because I was dumb, it was because I didn't understand what the hell they were talking about. I didn't want to do the things that they did. And then a Pākehā man picked me up virtually. Well, my mum and dad did a lot of it too. And I went through the banking system, and I ended up being a commercial bank manager. But it was because people picked me up and helped me along the way. They said, "Do you know how to add?" Well, no. Well, you better go home and learn. Okay, Dad, show me how to add. So he did. I knew to subtract them. And they did. So it was just little things like that. It wasn't even anything earth-shattering. And there are a lot of those young kids out there that all they need is a little bit of a hand up. Yeah.
I think there's 2 points in there I like to focus on, probably the perfect things to wrap us up on, is that what we're trying to do isn't earth-shattering. It's just kind of providing an opportunity for some people that have, they may have created the right mindset, or they've got the mindset, or we can inspire the mindset. We need to provide the opportunity for them to be able to build on that. And the last part that's been shared a little bit around, I like to focus on is, for me, in this space, and what we all do, it's not about changing people, it's about helping people to actually be themselves and realize they can build success, whatever that success looks like, being themselves. So you don't want to change people because there's something quite unique and authentic, well, not something quite, everyone's unique clearly, there's something very unique about every person, and there's something that only you have the ability to actually do. And we don't want to take that away from folk. And we think of, say, we'll use Taika as an example, as a good example, in that he's like, no, mate. Where, some people might say, hey, I find like just having fun. Perfect. Go off and having fun, doing the things he loves. Hey, and all of a sudden, it may not have worked 20 years ago, but right now people really want that stuff. And so it's a matter of, okay, some people may say no to you, some people might not care, but there might be the time when the timing is just right, and it's going to work for you. And I think for us, it's about empowering, I'm not going to use the word empowering, because when we say empowering our young people, it's suggesting that they're disempowered, okay? They're not. So it's about providing or giving opportunity, to our young people, and being that hand up, and not, changing the world by some massive tweak or whatever it could be. It's just little things that we can do to help change their world so they can go and do the incredible things that they want to do. But I want to wrap this up there because I've clearly gone over time. Again, just proving I love hearing my own voice into again. But I've really enjoyed the opportunity to come together and just share some thoughts. And I guess for me, the real empowering part is for us to be able to kind of share into that discussion, because this is our rohe, this is our region, this is what means something to us, and how do we support other people in this space. And so the onus is now fallen back on us. So we'll look, I guess, we haven't said it, but effectively we're committed to do something. And it's about, like telling stories of the people in our local area, supporting our younger people coming through and doing what we can do through collaboration, because we're doing some incredible things. There's a lot of stuff happening here and actually kind of uniting it on different fronts. So, but yeah, I don't really know how to wrap it up from there. I'm just going to say thank you for coming along. You'll see a hell of a lot of me. What that means is I'm going to ask you for favors when I'm back here. So when we bring more stuff for young enterprise, so I'm bringing put a plug up there. Bringing a couple back here. Don't have a date yet. Don't have a venue. Just putting it up there, anyone. Don't have a venue. About 40, 60 kids. You put your hand up really low.
I'm sure we can find something.
Oh yes. We want to bring Arangatei together. We want to focus, I guess, have year 9s and 10s. We're doing this around the country. We want to focus on I won't use the word concern because that seems to have a negative connotation, but a challenge within our community that we want our young people to focus towards and get their minds kind of open, get them thinking to be able to, I guess, provide or ideate and provide and present some solutions on what this challenge, whatever it may be, to kind of feed into it. We want it to be real because we want our young people to contribute to something that's in their community as opposed to, here's a made up idea, which is, yeah, so slash is perfect, right? And then have these kids or these young people present to the audience who can actually, we feel can make an impact on that concern. When they present back, my whole thought process at the moment is oftentimes we get kids or people to pitch to us. In my head, we get people to pitch, I get people to pitch to me for my benefit, not theirs, because it's easy for me to measure what they're doing. Sometimes our young people, particularly at this stage, we don't want to restrict them to thinking that's what you got to do to present an idea. If our young people want to draw, act out, create a mural or whatever that's going to tell the story of what was, what is, and what could be, I'd love them to use their talents in that way. Encouraging our young people to use their talents to tell a story or share an idea. So just putting it out there, you will hear from me, we'll be visiting, and we want to kind of bring our young people together for a couple of days, feed them up, water them, and kind of get some good ideas out of them as well, kind of support them where we can. But yeah, I'm here for questions if you want, if you can have a yarn. I'm just keen to kick it, hang out, all that good stuff, or you can cruise. Up to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.